Bonjour. Bonjour à tous et à toutes.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started. Thank you to those people who are in the room, or we've got a number of people online following as well, so thank you to those. I'm going to give the floor to co-president Maria. 5 minutes you have.
Because in plenary we have 2 minutes.
Maximum 5.
You are okay. Thank you very much. Good morning for everyone. First of all, I want to thank for your participating in the very important, in my opinion, very important discussion. In this morning, 8 o'clock, I had another discussion, and now for Europe, for you, it's important because we have EU strategy for the bioeconomy. Okay, it's important. Yesterday I had debate in plenary, and I said yesterday a lot of it's important, but a lot of innovation, research to increase rural resilience is needed, and to be able to have a bioeconomy not only in urban, in rural area, in agriculture. It is need budget. I was entrepreneur. For me, it's not possible. We'll have only measure, but don't have budget for implementation this measure. And I discussion yesterday with our commissioner. It's necessary we'll have in next budget one budget for innovation, for research, for implementation bioeconomy. Another problem, it's important to increase the confidence of company to invest. It's not enough we'll have capital, but we don't have trust for predictability, for a long term, not okay, we change after 1 year and I put my money and I don't have results, because in investigation don't have results immediately. We have medium term and long term. Okay. We have another problem because new EUDR regulation is, in my opinion, necessary, but has high influence in agriculture, in animal husbandry, considering the provision regarding product traceability. It's very important for explain what important, because it's a very high sanction in this the rule. It is important for me not to speak. It's important to listen to your opinion and suggestion, because we are here 3 co-president for different political group, but we are also member in Agri-Committee, an Agriculture Committee, and I assure you that for all problems we are for problems specifically for agriculture, for rural area, and for economy, we have together, and we have the same opinion, and try to need you, not need you, need us, because when function economy and when function agriculture, we have security, and we have good salary for workers, and we have social and we have possibility. Will increase in global market our products and our economy, because EU, it's not only EU in global market. We have big competition with China, with the United States. It's very important to what treaty we have for agriculture, for example, Mercosur, and another relation with another another market, and it's important we'll have protection consumer, but we'll have fair competition in internal market. Thank you very much, and for me it's very important to listen. Thank you. 5 minutes, huh?
Very good, Maria. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Maria. If there is one piece of legislation which I have focused on since I came to the Parliament, it's deforestation. I think it's an excellent example of a lack of a link up between the reality on the ground and what we're imposing on businesses. Today, I'd really like to tackle this issue so we can answer the following question. What is the impact of the European regulation on deforestation on the competitiveness of the stock breeding sector in the European Union? It's true that it affects a lot of other sectors, but given that we're in this intergroup, the livestock intergroup, it's important to look at it from a stock breeding point of view. Let's first of all look at the origins of this. According to the FAO, almost 90% of deforestation globally is linked to converting forests into land for farming. The European Union is a major importer of products associated to deforestation. Soya, mainly for animal feed, but also palm oil, cocoa, coffee, tea, rubber, beef, or wood. Given this, the European Union decided that it no longer wished to contribute even indirectly to deforestation at global level. The European Commission has therefore tabled a regulation based on a simple and legitimate principle. No product can be placed on the European market if it comes from land which has been deforested after 31st of December 2020. In fact, the contribution to deforestation is linked to imports because despite what many people think, the forest, the area in the European Union which is covered in forest has increased over the last decades. Since 1990, European forests have spread over tens of millions of hectares, indeed an area which is comparable to the area of Greece. So why should we apply this regulation to European producers as well? The answer to this question is linked to the principle of non-discrimination. In order to be in line with the rules of the WTO, it was not possible to have two distinct regimes, one for imports and the other for European producers. If only imports were affected, some of our trading partners could have taken us to WTO for protectionist measures. However, when you have new rules, you also have new obligations, you have new administrative burdens, and you have new costs. However, the stock breeding sector in Europe is already faced with major handicaps in the context of competition, the cost of land, the cost of labor, environmental and animal welfare requirements, to mention only a few. And how can you avoid having your doubts when at the same time the European Commission is expecting our stock breeders to take on an additional administrative financial burden in the name of countering deforestation, while at the same time pursuing a trade agreement like Mercosur? We know, and a number of studies have shown this, that an increase of trade in agricultural products with this region is likely to increase the pressure in terms of deforestation. This contradiction feeds the questionings of a number of stock breeders. So to impose the same administrative obligations on a French, Belgian, or Irish farmer as you impose on operator importing beef from a recently deforested region of Brazil is a measure with very high economic cost, whereas the environmental benefit is zero in the European context. So that's our question. How can we reconcile our international obligations and the fight against deforestation with the preservation of the competitiveness of our stock breeding sector? How can we protect forests without making a sector which is already under a lot of pressure even more fragile? This is a question that our speakers will try to reply to. Before I give the floor to our first expert, I'm going to give the floor to my colleague, the co-president, Alexander.
Thank you much, all colleagues, for being present here once again. You have pointed out the topic very well already, seeing all the challenges on deforestation and all the work we have done ahead. And I think it was really looking back to, I think, 2021, when we adopted this legislative file, nobody was aware in detail, and also a lot of stakeholders are here, and they learned thinking of. We will send out a lot of positive messages, and everybody is against deforestation in third countries, but nobody, and also including me, we were not aware about how much effects it will have to European economy, and also to explain it to our forest owners, to our landowners, to our cattle farmers. Who have absolutely, where we have in the European Union absolutely no problem with deforestation, that it will have a huge impact, and in a lot of bureaucracy and unnecessary bureaucracy, where we have to ask, is it also in line with our treaties of the European Union, making bureaucracy with absolutely no positive effect. So I think during the past 2 years we have made big efforts in this line. We adopted the deforestation regulation in, I think, very well way, where I think now we limited bureaucracy for, especially for primary producers, to a very limited stage. But now I think it's the time for implementation, and that's also where we have to be careful. On the one hand side, to our national governments, not to making too much. To make it too much bureaucracy, but also on our economy side, on our industry side, that they also take the possibilities within the regulation, and not making red tapes and being too strict on implementing this. So I think it has to be one by one. I think we have also to use some kind of flexibility to be ambitious, not to be too ambitious. I think that's something we have to be careful, but also that's why we are happy to listen to experts today. So thank you much for having this special topic today, and looking forward for the expertise of our colleagues.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Maintenant, je vais passer la parole à...
I'll now give the floor to my colleague, Asger Christensen, who is himself a farmer in Denmark.
Minutes.
Tak for det, og det er på dansk.
Thank you very much. I'll be speaking Danish. You need to get your headphones on, because Asger is speaking Danish. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say something about EUDR. When we decided to postpone it last year, it was partly because legislation wasn't ready. There was a great deal of expenditure for our companies, and we're still not ready. And it's still very expensive for our businesses. The Commission simplification package is a step in the right direction, but there's still a lot of problems. And what we're hearing from our businesses in Denmark is that it's going to be a bureaucratic nightmare and a lot of challenges with IT, and it's going to affect the supply chains, and the supply chains are going to be a lot more expensive. It's going to strike the businesses and the farmers, and at the end of the day, products are going to be more expensive for the consumer, so we need to turn it around. We need to protect our forests, I agree with that, but we have to find a model which will make it easier for us to tackle it. Nobody wants forests to be cut down to grow soya for animals on the European markets. So we've simply got to demand that the Commission looks at this again, because what we have on the table at the moment is something which is just not going to fly in real life. Because if we adopt what's currently on the table, it will simply increase the expenditure for the whole of our sector. And as I've said before, we're building a bureaucratic monster. We're talking about simplification in all areas, and here we come with a piece of legislation which is doing the exact opposite. We as politicians have got to say no to this. I say no anyway. I've discussed EUDR with Danish businesses, and they're tearing their hair out about this proposed legislation from the Commission, which we don't agree with either. We don't like the way it's structured. But finally, can I just say that we're not opposed to looking after our forests. And as has been pointed out, we do have an increased area of forestry, and there's actually a policy in Denmark that we're going to increase the areas that has forest cover from 15% to 25%. So we're not deforesting in Europe, on the contrary. So thank you very much for giving me the floor. We really have to combat this bureaucratic monster. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Asger. Maintenant, je vais passer la parole.
I'll now give the floor to Ms. Monica Hensey of DG Environment, Director of Unit F, Green Diplomacy and Multilateralism. Ms. Hensey, thank you very much for participating in our work. You have 10 minutes. And Ms. Hensey is online.
Parfait.
Yes, good morning. I hope you all hear me well. Thank you very much, dear co-chairs of the Sustainable Livestock Intergroup, honorable members. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss with you the implementation of the EUDR, the EU Deforestation Regulation, and to discuss also the challenges regarding the competitiveness of the EU's livestock sector. I would like to start by referring to the adoption of this regulation. So it is an adopted regulation since June 2023. And we in the Commission believe, but I think this was also the view of the co-legislators when they adopted this legislation, that it is a rather game-changing legislation from an environmental protection point of view. This being said, we did face challenges, and I'm the first one to admit that. This is also why we actually postponed the coming into application of this legislation on 2 occasions. Of course, on the more positive side, that actually gave more time for operators, including small and micro operators, foresters, farmers to prepare, and it also gave us time. So I first thank everybody for this opportunity to discuss the implementation of the EU Deforestation Regulation, which was adopted in 2023 in June. So this regulation is already an adopted one, which is now to come into application end of this year. So what we are now discussing with stakeholders, and I'm very welcome this opportunity here, is the implementation. I also explained that we had some challenges, and I think you are well aware, because this is a groundbreaking regulation. It's a rather extensive one. I also heard from the floor remarks on that. And indeed, we had some challenges to prepare for a smooth implementation, and hence it was postponed twice, the entry into application. But it is now going to enter into application end of this year. This, of course, gave us also some opportunity to take that time to further clarify, but also simplify the regulation. And this is why the Commission published on the 4th of May a simplification review of the EUDR. This introduce further reductions on administrative burdens, especially for small businesses. However, we did that within the boundaries of the law, so we did not reopen the legislation. I know that today we talk both about animal feed and soy and of course cattle. So let me just say one word on the role of soy in the EUDR. The reason why this is one of the covered commodities, because it is a significant driver of deforestation. So it is estimated that about 1/3 of the overall EU-driven deforestation is because of this specific crop. However, I also would like to clarify that no other feed for livestock is included on the scope. And actually, if you read the recital of the EUDR, it is acknowledged that to ensure that this regulation achieves its objectives, it is. Now I will move to discuss the cattle sector and the question of competitiveness. When it comes to competitiveness of the EU cattle sector, we know that this depends indeed on many factors. The recent simplification that we adopted in December 2025, but also the package of simplification of May this year, included a number of simplifications in this regard. I mean, first of all, in the EUDR now, MSPOs are not even required to submit simplified declaration if the member state has the required data available in an information system. So this is another simplification. Of course, we need to see which member states will take advantage of this opportunity, but normally if there is already a national database that provides the same data required, then there is this can be, of course, fed into our IT system. And this, I think, will also simplify, hopefully, everybody's life. And now I would like last to mention the question of harmonized or more uniform enforcement between member states. I think this is also the role of the Commission, and we work very closely with our member states, the 27 competent authorities, in several formats. We have an informal enforcement working group. We have a multi-stakeholder platform on protecting and restoring the world's forest, where we actually discuss in great detail how the law is interpreted and how it is to be applied. And the frequently asked question and guidance documents that we publish have gone through this very detailed discussion with the member states. And again, the aim is, of course, to facilitate operators, farmers, foresters' life in this respect. So I will close my intervention, which became longer than I planned. I'm sorry for that because of the technical issues, to say that the EUDR remains a landmark environmental regulation. Our aim is now to give stability, policy and regulatory stability to all of you, and especially operators. But of course, we are there to ensure that any help we can provide further is provided. So we are always open to come, discuss, explain as needed, as we will embark on this journey together end of this year. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much. Well, let's continue. And perhaps we can ask the questions later on. From the Commission, we'll now go on to the Council. I'll give the floor to Mr. Felix Brzezinski, who is an expert in agriculture and environment. He works in the German Federal Ministry for Food and Agriculture, where he's closely involved in coordinating policies linked to European policy in the area of deforestation. Dr. Felix Brzezinski, you have 10 minutes.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Parliament, participants here in the room and online. I would also like to warmly welcome you to today's meeting on EUDR, and I would like to present you the German perspective on EUDR and its impact on the German cattle farming and what we are doing to implement the regulation very smoothly in this sector. I will talk also about what we have achieved in reducing the burden for our cattle sector, but also for our primary producers in general. and about the recent developments and tasks that still lie ahead of us. So, next slide. Yeah, Germany fully supports the objective of the EUDR, protecting world's forests and reduce our contribution to the global deforestation. It's right and important that we take action, that we take responsibility, and at the same time, the right objective needs the right instruments. For regulation as far-reaching as EUDR, the rules must be targeted, practical, precise, and proportionate. They must not place unnecessary burden on companies, on our farmers, our authorities. They must not cause avoidable price increases. Global forest protection does not help if European companies lose competitiveness while trade flows simply move elsewhere and deforestation continues without restriction. Therefore, we must pay close attention to our own agricultural and forestry sector. This is why Germany set its goal in its coalition agreement that the EUDR should become more practical and that an unnecessary burden must be avoided. We wanted a regulation that acts where real deforestation risks exist, and we wanted relief where the effort is not proportionate to the risk. So, in close cooperation with the European Commission, with the European Parliament, with the Member States, and also with all our stakeholders in Germany, and we have a lot of them in Germany, we achieved important simplifications in the legislative procedure at the end of last year, but also in a simplification review in the beginning of this year. First, the application was postponed again. Companies, authorities, partner countries, but also the Commission needed more time to prepare for this complex regulation. A start without a functioning system, sufficient clarity, practical procedures would not have helped anyone. Second, we achieved important relief for our primary producers. All EU member states have a low risk for deforestation, and in most of the countries, including Germany, deforestation is not a relevant problem. Low risk must also mean low administrative effort. The simplified one-time declaration that we established for our primary producers, for our small primary producers, avoids disproportionate documentation requirements. What they have to do is just enter their name, their postal address, the estimated amount of cattle they want to place on the market on an annual basis, and that's the whole thing. And this applies to 99% of all our cattle farmers in Germany. Third, we achieved important relief for our downstream supply chain. This is also crucial for our farmers, as they have not to transmit extensive documentations and evidence. Not duplicated checks has to be made in the downstream supply chain, and responsibilities that do not provide any benefit for global forest protection. Fourth, trade with important partner countries was made easier where the risks for deforestation is also not significant. We worked to strengthen the risk-based approach to the EUDR example in relation to the legality requirements, which is, I think, very important. Where the risk is low, the requirements should also be lower. Fifth, we initiated, as Monica mentioned, a clear approach to creating the European level playing field. The EUDR must be implemented in the different member states in a consistent, efficient, and harmonized way. And we hope to achieve this goal together with the other member states and the Commission. To summarize, we have achieved important simplification and improvements on the other side without lowering the level of ambition of the regulation. So now, how do we implement the regulation in the German farming sector? We are working very hard to implement EUDR in Germany in a lean, legally sound and practical way. The burden on our cattle farmers, soy producers and forest owners should remain as low as possible. For cattle farming, we use our national system that all member states established several years ago on the basis of the EU rules on identification and registration of bovine animals. I think everybody has it in place since 20 or 30 years. The system is already ensuring traceability throughout the whole cattle supply chain, and all the needed data are stored there to submit the due diligence statements from our cattle farmers into the EU information system. So we will use the system to support our farmers to comply with the EUDR. We started this process in adapting the system and connecting it with the EU information system already in 2024. Now we are adapting the system again to the changes that has been made. But our goal is clear. Cattle farmers should be able to submit their declarations to comply with the EUDR through a system where they're familiar with, and in a largely automated way. They should not have to enter the same data over and over again in additional systems which are hard to use or very complex in the registration procedure. So our national system will be able to pre-fill both the simplified one-time off declaration for smaller farmers and the regular due diligence statements for our larger farmers using the existing data within the system. The farmer will only once in their lifetime have to check if the data are correct and then click to submit. The reference number will also be passed to them automatically and also passed automatically to the next businesses in the supply chain. This means that the additional burden for our German cattle farmers in complying with EUDR will reduce to almost zero. Other member states, and I know we conducted a survey, will use their systems as well to support their farmers. So I would say I have a problem with the slides, but anyway, okay, the remaining tasks. So the main political decisions have been taken. There is more time to prepare. There has been important simplification has been agreed. However, we have still key tasks that remain. We need a reliable, high-performing and user-friendly EU information system. This is not a technical detail. It is a key requirement for a smooth and seamless application of the EUDR. And the European Commission has made the new system available last week. Businesses and our authorities are now testing this new environment, whether it's mature, stable, easy to use and practical. And we hope that the main issues that we saw in the past are solved in the revised system. And a second key target is the key level playing field throughout all the European member states. We will continue to work for a consistent implementation and enforcement of EUDR across the European Union. The same standards must apply throughout the single market, and we will continue along this path consistently in the coming months and years ahead. So what's still to come? The outlook, EUDR will start to apply at the end of this year. Small farmers, small businesses have 6 additional months, and this will also mark the start of an important testing phase, as we see it at least from Germany. Companies and our authorities will gain practical experience, procedures will evolve and become established over time. Questions that now seem more abstract will become clearer in practice, and what matters is that we learn from these experiences. So we, from our German side, from the German Ministry of Agriculture, with the whole government as well, we will closely follow the application of EUDR. We will listen to the feedback of our stakeholders, of our farmers, but also of our importers, and use our experience gained to support the Commission in further improving the EUDR. This will be important in the general review of the EUDR in 2030, but also before then. Our objective remains unchanged, effective. We want an effective, targeted and efficient implementation, application and enforcement. From our perspective, forest protection and competitiveness of our companies and farmers must be achieved both. So with that, I leave it here. And I would like to thank you for listening and your willingness to continue shaping this process together with us. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Félix.
Now move on over to the farmers. It's important to have the opinion from the field of those who will have to implement the regulation. I will now give the floor to Daniel Coulonval, who is the president of the Wallonian Agricultural Federation. Daniel, you have 10 minutes. Thank you very much, Benoit. Ladies and gentlemen, MEPs, I will be speaking on behalf of my federation, or Wallonian Agricultural Federation. I am a farmer in a village in the south of Belgium, and as you can see, my farm is based on permanent grassland. We have 400 animals, so we have dairy cows and other animals. So this is my village, and as you can see, the villages in Wallonia are framed, if you like, by woods and forests. So our localization is very specific in that these lands and these castles, you can see, are from the Middle Ages, from the 13th century, in fact. We are practically living in the forest. So for us, the EUDR will bring about too many uncertainties. If we see how the text has changed, we're wondering, for example, about what is the minimum surface for a forest to be considered a forest. There is no definition about how much deforestation actually is considered deforestation. This can be a problem. Imagine if in a field you have a few trees and you cut down these trees. Well, is this considered to be deforestation? Our basic regulation defines this very well. It has very good definition of agricultural zones and wooded zones. But what about forests within agricultural zones? And what about plots of land which were used differently over the past 30 years? In Wallonia, we also grow Christmas trees. And if a farm was used for Christmas trees and then was being turned into grassland, is this considered to be deforestation? This isn't set out in the regulation. So we would like this to be more clearly defined so that we will have good quality zoning. Now, as you know, all of the acts of deforestation and forest clearing are subject to permits, and until 2021, such permits were granted. And these acts, which used to be authorized by the administration, will they be approved under the proposed regulation? We don't know. I have the example of a person who bought some land. So this was some shrubland. So this was land that used to belong to the community, which was then used for agriculture, which was abandoned. It became shrubland. And then some farmers and people working with the LIFE project want to clear this shrubland to make it grassland again, while respecting the maintaining of the ecosystem. But will this forest clearing how will this be dealt with under the new regulation? We don't have an answer to this question either. Now, another specific example. As you well know, if a cow enters a slaughterhouse, it cannot leave the slaughterhouse alive for health reasons. Now, imagine that the cow doesn't have if the appropriate documents aren't sent in with the cow, well, what happens? Is the cow going to be slaughtered in any case, in which case the cow is wasted, or will there be another solution? We don't have an answer to this question. So we need some clarity here. What will the practice be for us in Belgium? So the position of the Wallonian Agricultural Federation, to clarify the situation, first of all, is to adapt the date. I think that we need to have clear dates which are compliant with what we as farmers have to do. We have to take into account of territorial zones which are set out at a national level. When a plot of land has a specific status as an agricultural zone, it cannot be rezoned on the basis of this new regulation And if it's zoned as a forest, that must remain the case. We need clarification on minimal deforestation. There were already 2 delays and postponements rather, and we're aware of the efforts that are made, and we are grateful for those who have examined the file, but we are nonetheless facing a number of uncertainties which we would like to be clarified. Now, as regards the administrative burden, I won't reiterate what's already been said, but allow me to say that we cannot impose more red tape on farmers. We know that the administrative burden is really something which slows down farming, it stops young people from coming into the job, it creates extra costs. We don't want new administrative burden for farmers. This needs to be as clear as possible. Of course, we agree with the regulation and it's going to protect us globally, but it's not the farmer's job just to fill in endless sheets of paper. His job is to feed our populations. So I'll move on to the DDS number. This is the wrong way forward. Having tools at an EU national level to avoid all regulation which is going to make things even more difficult for farmers with new IT programs. Of course, identification is necessary and we need to have national systems, but we don't need to have additional burden and additional documents for the farmers. If you ask the farmers who are telling you to do this, they're going to tell you where to shove it because they're already doing far too much. So we really want the national authorities to do their job. Because, of course, member states do want this change, which we understand, but let them do the job rather than us, farmers. Our suggestion is that everything would be managed nationally on the basis of existing legislation with basing land use plans, and it shouldn't be up to the farmer to handle these things which are beyond his influence. If we need extra traceability and visibility, well, the national member states can carry out this work. Now, of course, there is a cost. For Belgium, this would cost €900,000. And like everyone, there are budgetary constraints. So my question is, who's going to pay for this? We need to ensure there is a budget for this. And this is a question for the regions and nation states to know who is going to pay for this. So if nothing happens, it'll be the farmers and slaughterhouses who are going to suffer, as well as the sectors associated with them. We are aware that we are facing huge challenges. These challenges relating to beef imports. We're competing with countries which, how can I put it? They have large financial support who are competing with us. Now, I've been talking about beef, but there's also sheep and goats. All of these sectors are threatened in these areas of low altitude where land use has changed. So the efforts are being made about protecting the environment, and I mentioned the LIFE project earlier on. So there are all these farmers who are committed to protecting the environment and developing biodiversity around their farms. They are now penalized for all of the efforts and the money that they've invested. So once again, we don't want a system like this. What we want, it's up to the to our nations to adapt and not to the farmers to do all of the work yet again. So once again, I'd like to recall all the work that's been done to keep farms going. We just want to work, and if you could just let us do our work in peace, it would be better. We have goodwill and we understand what the EU is trying to do, but we don't want to be the people forced to implement all of this. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, my colleague Thomas de Monti will happily answer them, so you can contact him. You have his details on the screen, so you can get a better view of what we've done in Wallonia. So thank you for your attention.
Daniel,
Thank you, Daniel, for that excellent presentation.
je passe maintenant la parole.
I'll now give the floor to Giorgio Della Bona, Vice President of COSERAL. The supply chain for soy is obviously at the heart of our discussions on deforestation and the competitiveness of farming. So, Mr. Della Bona, thank you for being here. You have 10 minutes, and I'll ask you to keep to your speaking time because we'll have to leave for votes at 12.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you to the member of the parliament, our stakeholders and friends online. So I'm Vice President of COSERAL. I represent the small companies in COSERAL. COSERAL, as a rule of thumb, as president, two vice presidents, and the three must show the full range of traders in the community. So large one, medium, and small. So I represent the small one, and I work in Italy in a small company. So COSERAL, as you probably know, is the association of all the traders of Europe. We have more than 3,000 companies that are more or less connected to us, 20 national, 18 countries, and then we have also corporate members as well as associate members, and then some extraordinary member after. This is how we place ourselves in the food chain. So there is the third country's business, and then there are the traders, and then there is the line down to the supply chain in Europe. COSERAL, of course, we are all committed to no deforestation, and actually we have been doing it already at the beginning of the Green Deal, knowing that it was coming, and so we have been approaching it via different ways. We, of course, gave a lot of support to policymakers by informing them about numbers, figures, and whatever was available in our database to give them a good view of how the soy flow was going. This is an infographic to show you how is the complexity of our soya supply chains. So as you can see, there could be like 10,000 farmers per region. We are talking about origins now, so overseas. Then there are maybe 1,000 collectors per region. Then there are about 100 regional stores. Then there are crushing plants for using the soybeans and make it meal and oil, and at least 100 per region as well. Then there are exports, and then you have destination market, which I will show you later. So this is an outlook of world production of soybeans. This gives you an idea who is controlling the world of soybeans production. So first is Brazil, then US, and Argentina. The rest is more or less minor productions, let's say. Italy, for instance, is the larger producer in Europe with 1 million tons. So Brazil has 184 million tons production. Next year, maybe more. Who is importing? This is the other side, no? So we have the supply side and we have the demand side. And as you can see, there is a number one, only a number one, China. So they of course, look at what we are doing in Europe, deforestation, but of course they need a lot of commodities. So they cannot force some markets not to produce or produce in a different way because they need badly the commodity. As you can see, Europe is second. So, but we are like 8% of the world trade. At the end of the 2025 was 183 million, the trade of soy. And Europe is importing about 50 million tons, so we are about 8% only of the demand. So with this in mind, we have to see what is going to happen in the world. So are they going to follow us, the producer, or not? This is just to show you also the meal side. So here you have the larger producer. Here we have Argentina, that is the larger producer because they don't have so much local demand. They have a smaller crop of the tree, but they need to export more soybean meal into the foreign markets. And then you have Brazil and US, of course. And these are the imports. So here we are number one. Europe is number one importer for soy. So we have like 25% of the world, 25% of the world trade. So here we can say something, but of course we need to ask them too many things, too many troubles, too many documents to farmers, starting from the farmers, because when you import soybean meal, it goes through the supply chain I showed before. So it means that it has to go through different channels. Those channels must all be controlled, and this is a difficulty. So at the moment, we are unable to comply with the current draft. The administrative burden is extremely heavy. We have this legal and liability uncertainty about what we have to ask at origin to produce then in the import into Europe. And so we recommend what we have been doing already in the past is that to use third-party certification schemes like RTRS, ProTerra, ProFarm, and ProForest. So those are the most recognized system, private system, that have been used by the trade. Then we need to harmonize the legality across the UE member state because everybody is doing something that is different from the others. And then the FAQ and the guidance document were not really helping the imports, but were rather helping the end user in Europe. So the simplification package in May provided a limited solution to the address that we issued. And without a targeted legislatively amended, number of operators will be unable to comply. So what I would say, this is all. I want to say something without the PowerPoint, because you say, I live on a daily basis in the market, so I know exactly what is going on. And what I perceive as a company is that today, 9 of July, we haven't done a single business for 2027. Why? Nobody is offering anything. Why nobody is offering anything? Because the uncertainty about what is going to happen in September when the IT system will start is not promoting anybody to invest a single euro into that, because they are afraid that what we spent so far has been thrown away. So just for my company, we spent 2 million euros in the last 2 years to create 6 team members, have external auditors, have the IT system, our subsystem connected to traces in EU, and this is money thrown away. For us, it was 2 million euro, was something that we could apply to new machinery, new technology, salaries, everything else. But this has been thrown away. And I say for a small company, because I'm a small company, but you can add a 0 to that number for the large company, because they have been doing that all around the world. Another thing I want to say is that this system, if we don't change the controls of the flow from fully segregated to another system, we may have a disruption supply, because a lot of people in Brazil, in Argentina, or in the US may say, you know what, for us it's much better not to have all this burden. Already Europe, don't forget, it is a large requesting country, because we request a lot of documents already, goes for aflatoxin, goes for heavy metals, goes for pesticides. So we have already a list of packs. When you buy something abroad, it is EU legislation. So the people know already that it will cost more. It's already costing more. But when we go into EUDR with full segregation from, I don't know, Mato Grosso or Chaco or Illinois to Europe, that is something else. That you will have a constraint all along the flow, because everything has to be controlled. I was explaining to somebody yesterday that if we start with this EUDR, I cannot discharge the vessel until I finish the previous lot. So there is money always involved. A vessel, as you probably know, costs $30,000 to $40,000 a day waiting. So if you have to wait to empty the store because you have to finish that lot that was with the DDS number, and then you add the other one, this is money. I mean, this has to be taken into account. We cannot survive in a world like this, but not us, Europe, because like our President Speaker said, we will have competition, not only from overseas, but also from nearby countries like Ukraine. So this is the problem that will affect Europe, that we will have higher cost, which we estimate for normal soya between 8 and 15% more than the standard soy. So you can add that somebody at those origin are buying soya much cheaper than Europeans, and then they can compete into our market with Mercosur, for instance. No? So this is the situation where we stand. It's very, very difficult for us to survive with this EUDR. So we need, in a way or the other, change it, particularly on the flow of the commodity, on the control of the flow of the commodity. It has to be more open. Okay? That's all.
Merci beaucoup pour cette...
Thank you very much for that presentation, which ends with a real alarm call. Comments from you are all the more welcome because you are on the ground. And I've been told by others that there's a real problem with implementing this legislation. We need to take political decisions to avoid a disaster in Europe. I'm going to open the floor now, starting with my colleagues from the Parliament. So, Christine, Valerie, and Marco. Marco has just left. And then Stefan will conclude.
Vielen Dank für die
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for organizing this meeting to discuss this issue and clearing up what kind of disaster we're steering towards in Belgium. People are wondering about how they're going to implement it. It's the same as the situation in Germany. We've no idea how we're going to implement it. The associations have no idea either. The stakeholders don't know. We don't know how the value chains are going to develop. I mean, the value chains, supply chains run because that's the way we found it works. And now we've no idea. We need to make it quite clear to the Commission that it's not possible to implement it in this form because nobody knows how it will develop. And nobody knows what's going to happen when we get the first implementation. So thank you very much for raising this issue.
Merci Christine. Valérie?
Thank you, Valerie.
Merci, Monsieur Cassard.
Thank you very much for organizing this meeting to raise some very important issues. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a farmer as well. So as a farmer, I can give you my opinion. EUDR is based on a pious wish, a good wish to fight deforestation, but frequently good intention does not lead to good legislation, and we need to look at the real impact in our sector. Looking at soya, in 2022-23, 7.5 million tons of soy was imported, and there's already a lot that's being imported which is guaranteed not deforested. So what the EUDR is doing at the moment is not to convince the people who are lagging behind, but to get the animal stock breeding sector to foot the bill, and we already have a lot to pay. 1/3 of France is already forested, and we have a great deal of sustainability. So to punish both the stock breeding sector and the forestry sector in a country where we have a great deal of sustainability is not fair. There are a number of member states who will apply the text to the letter, and others will try to get around it. So it'll be those who try to do it properly who will suffer. So we want three things: simplification of the procedures, the operators, particularly in the smaller businesses, and the stock breeders cannot shoulder all the traceability and the red tape, which is added to a lot of red tape we already have. We have to work together. We have to make sure that each link of the chain does not do the work again. And it doesn't make sense to impose strict standards on our producers while importing products which do not fulfill the same environmental conditions. So we have to have equivalent requirements for imports, otherwise we're just transferring deforestation to other markets that don't care, and then proportionality of checks in line with the real risks. Brazil and other countries do not have the same risk of deforestation as a European country where there's already a certification procedure that's working. So let's concentrate where there are most risks rather than imposing the same rules on all origins. That would be fairer. The EUDR should not be an extra bill to be paid by our farmers to compensate for a badly run inspection system. We need something that works properly, not a system which adds red tape and punishes the virtuous while not doing anything about worldwide deforestation. Thank you. Thank you very much. The floor is open.
Personne ne veut parler.
Doesn't anybody want to take the floor?
Mein Name ist Anja Arndt.
Anja Arndt is my name. And I'm the coordinator of DSN in the Committee for the Environment and Climate. And we've looked closely at the EUDR, and I'm very surprised that the Commission did not carry out a proper impact assessment. It's ridiculous to lose this kind of legislation on the world and create so many problems. And we've now seen that there are other regulations coming from the Commission, regulations which are currently being negotiated, and other legislation has been introduced since the Green Deal, things that have been adopted by the MEPs, which are equally fatal in their impact. And I'm extremely worried about the European Union and about our economy and our very existence. On the 1st of January 2027, we're going to have the next level of implementation of the methane regulation, where we have very similar problems when it comes to energy supply for the European Union. So we have fires exploding all over the place. I think it's important for us to discuss the EU legislation and the way it's being implemented.
Merci, Président. The European feed manufacturers. My name is Alexander During, Secretary General. I'd like to just add two observations, maybe also additional information. As we heard our speaker from the soy trade side, as a feed industry, we have already put in place for more than 10 years an auto-control program, well, we call it a benchmarking program, to reassure our customers, farmers, downstream partners that the soy we are using, whether of EU origin, we have soy production, as we heard in Europe, or imported, is indeed meeting a high level of environmental and good agricultural practices standards. So it's an issue, a very important one for our sector, which we have taken care of for a decade. And in this case, Our benchmarking partner is ITC in Geneva, is a WTO subsidiary, is also a close partner for the European Commission in promoting the EUDR. So we have a very robust benchmarking program for responsible soy deliveries to Europe in place with a very good success in our estimates. Way above 95% of the soy we are using cannot be linked to deforestation. It goes even beyond that. We are also looking at other high-value protection areas. You think about wetlands and others, so it's called a high-value conversion area. So in a sense, we're way beyond on what the legislator is actually asking for. So what we're really coming back to is what we heard from our colleague, and is our major plea, is to build or to find a way to accept and recognize those existing private sector systems, which are all subject to third-party verification. So in a way, the good news part, I would say, there is enough soy products available in principle, meeting all the legislative criteria. How do we get it into Europe at the lowest possible extra cost to our livestock farmers so that they can stay competitive? This is the core of the debate. With the present proposal on the table, as we heard now, imposing a way of segregation, we have good examples in the real world. You know there is a market for many years on non-GM supplies, non-GM feed materials. The market reality, as can be confirmed by our supply chain partners, is if you do that on a segregation base, that can cost you up to 100 euro per ton. This is the market price for non-GM for a single ton. As long as you have a customer to pay for that, very good. But in the case of EUDR, where it becomes a generic requirement for all the players, yeah, the only loser in this will be our customer, the livestock farmer. And at that moment, we also fear, and we have shared these reports with the European Commission over the past 3 years, we are still highly concerned about the risk of disruption, as you heard before. Without Brazil, we're not going to make it. There is no other party that can substitute for soybean meal deliveries from Brazil. Beans is a different story, but last year, record imports of 11.5 million tons. Nobody, not the US, not Argentina, can step in, certainly not Ukraine, to replace this amount. So we would really like to underline the urgency now of finding a practical solution, as you heard. So otherwise, yeah, we're going into potentially into a wall, and we will see real disruption, which will hurt our customers, because our job in the times of food security challenges we are all facing at this very moment, this would be the worst possible outcome at the current stage of implementation. Thank you.
Sylvain, réaction?
Merci beaucoup. Oui.
Sylvain, would you like to react? Yes. I'm from the Wheat Producers Organization. We agree that we have to have a lot less impact on the farmers. And we're far from the result that we want. One idea that Claude put to me is that we already have so much information at the European Union through declaration for the CAP. So it should be possible to find a way to use the CAP declarations to cover all these aspects of sustainability. This applies to EUDR, but also to biofuels, so that all these rules relating to sustainability could be covered, so that farmers wouldn't have to make additional declarations. So the Commission should be able to implement the sustainability aspects using the CAP declaration. It should be possible. Thank you. Apparently, the European Commission would like to react. Let's hope that technically that works.
Say something last thing or no? 2 minutes? Because I want to reply to our stakeholders. Regarding what he said about Brazilian, because somebody may ask why you buy Brazilian, because the trade tend to give the best quality protein to the buyers at the lowest price. So Brazilian soybeans is the best in the world for quality in the sense of protein and oil, and it's the cheapest in the world. So this is why we buy a lot of Brazilian soybeans in Europe, because it delivers the best results for the feed industry in Europe. Finito.
Merci.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Yes, Commission, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I wanted to react to some of what I have heard in the room, and thank you so much for sharing the real life experiences and challenges in preparing for this regulation. First of all, I wanted to underline that we still have some time. I mean, small and micro primary operators will only need to apply this regulation from June 30th next year, so 2027. So that is a year from now. I very often meet operators, including recently met a global operator on soybean who for years has told us that they are not ready, that it's impossible. And the last I heard is they said, well, please do not postpone anymore, because we actually are ready and we think that this is going to give us a competitive advantage. So I would like to basically encourage everybody to use this year well. Second, we have just opened the IT system. So the IT system is already open. One not only can test, one can already start uploading the necessary information either for DDSs, the due diligence statements, or simplified declaration. And of course, we also have a help desk, both for policy questions. Some of the questions I heard here were very detailed and we're happy to answer them, or for IT questions. Third, as you also heard from the presentation from Germany, we are really working very hard to ensure that by the time this comes to life, we can interconnect some national databases that already contain the same information that is required by EUDR. So many member states have made progress, and notably you have heard from Germany, and this of course will again facilitate life. I also wanted to clarify one thing that regards downstream operators. One of the major simplification and last year was that we practically removed most of the obligations on downstream operators. So that actually means that only the first operator placing a live cattle on the market has to do a DDS or a simplified, I mean, depending of course whether they're small and micro. So that means that every subsequent person selling live cattle, so further in the value chain, would qualify as a trader or a downstream operator, and hence will not need to do a new DDS, because I've heard from somebody saying that they need to do repeatedly the same thing. This may have been in the original version of the regulation. This is no longer in the current version. So I just wanted to clarify that. Next, I wanted to react. There were, I think it was from the representative in Wallonia, who said that there are some issues about definition of deforestation. And I just wanted to say that we actually went into great detail in our guidance document that for the moment is available in English, but hopefully next week we will publish it also on many other languages in great detail to explain what we mean by deforestation. Of course, it relies on international definitions, but it explains, for instance, how we treat set-aside land and follow land. These were, I think, some of the questions. And then last, I also wanted to mention, somebody mentioned certification, that we are working also on a repository that we want to put online by the end of the year, where different certification schemes can be uploaded by authorities or by those who actually run such certification schemes. And this can be, of course, helpful for to support the compliance. It will not give you a green card, you cannot, a lane, but it can help support the compliance and also the authorities when they do their risk assessment. So thank you very much. I just wanted to draw the attention to some of these facilitations that we have prepared, and to emphasize again that the simplified declaration is actually really simple and only needs to be done once. Thank you so much.
Merci.
Thank you. I have a question for you. Do you have time for one more question?
Okay. Je voudrais vous poser...
I have a question about the philosophy itself of the regulation. We're starting with the assumption that if we import goods from land that hasn't been deforested, we are not contributing to deforestation. But if we have an agreement, such as the one we have in Mercosur, which increases the quantities we import, is this solving the problem? Or are we only shifting it by pushing Brazilian farmers to produce on deforested land and exporting that to China? You've seen that exports to China are huge compared to what we are importing into Europe. Can we really hope that this philosophy will work?
Can you hear me? Yes. I guess it was a question to me.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I think, thank you for mentioning Mercosur. I mean, I think it is exactly a time of Mercosur where we, of course, also think that, EU-Mercosur trade will increase, that it is indeed extremely important to have EUDR in place and to ensure that we do not contribute to deforestation. Now, of course, EUDR doesn't cover trade between, let's say, Argentina and China. But what we have seen already, and there are many reports also, that it already has positive effect on some of our partners who are looking to, I would maybe not say copy, but to inspire themselves from EUDR, and they are putting similar schemes in place. So I hope that the answer to your question is that indeed it will make a positive impact.
Mm-hmm. Personnellement, je suis pas trop.
Well, personally, I'm not really convinced, but thank you for your answer. Stefan, I think the time has come for some conclusions, and I know you're very good at that. So thank you for being here as well. It's over to you.
Dear co-chair, thank you, dear colleagues, dear speakers. Thank you for this very insightful discussion and your contributions. And I would like to add a few words before we close this meeting. I was a little bit late, but I've heard the Belgian colleague who was saying that he's asking for a national IT system. I don't know if this makes it easier, but this all has to be connected together. But what I was wondering is the extreme cost with 900,000 euros. And I also was very impressed of the words of the co-serial member who was saying that it's pretty hard to prove all the single product streams and that they actually don't invest any money in IT systems or certification because it's wasted money. I hope these words will go till the Commission so that they know and that they listen carefully that the system probably cannot be implemented. I believe this discussion is very timely as livestock producers will soon be required to prove that their cattle but also relevant feed ingredients are sourced from land that has not been subjected to deforestation after 31st December 2020. This leads to higher administrative burden as farmers, cooperatives and processors face additional record keeping, documentation and data sharing obligations. Supply chain transparency and potential increases in production costs are also aspects that we need to consider. Particularly, smaller producers will notice this effect. I am still quite worried about the fitness of the Commission's IT system for this big undertaking. I tried to get into the IT system and I'm still not happy with it. We have seen recently that the IT system cannot handle the amount of data when large companies, for example, like IKEA, upload the required documentation for a few months only. I sincerely hope that the system that has been opened at the beginning of this month is more resilient and capable to handle large data sets. Soon, many small operators will begin using, and they rely on the Commission's doing the homework. Thank you again for the contributions, and I hope to see you again soon for another intergroup meeting. And maybe we should think, because all the groups are represented today, that we talk to each of our coordinators to write a letter to the Commission to push a little bit more forward that if it's not able to be implemented, that they should stop already the thing. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Well, it's true. We talked a lot about agricultural and farming, and there are a couple of figures that came to mind and things that I've heard over the last few weeks. A boat from Brazil is equivalent to 12 million plots of land. And you imagine the paperwork that goes along with such arrivals from Brazil. Well, Stefan mentioned IKEA and the amount of data which is encoded is overloading the systems, and the system can't cope. So there are some very specific, tangible examples. A company producing biscuits said we work with 25,000 small producers of cocoa in cacao in Africa. And how can we impose all of this on them? We can see there's a real dysfunctioning here. There is a good will. There is a regulation based on an idea that I don't believe in, but well, it's there. And then there's the reality in the field, which is impossible to align with the rest. So this is going to make the system all the more complicated because some companies are investing to try and adapt to the system. But another concern I have is that, well, the large companies will manage, but these small companies might end up sidelined. So we have some questions, and we need to find answers to everything that's been raised today. Thank you very much, one and all, for participating. I'm very pleased there were over 200 people online with us today, so I'm pleased there were so many of us interested in this real problem, and I hope we'll find some real solutions. Thank you.